He threw me out. My husband dragged me into the rain. Like a criminal. Then brought out his young slay queen. To mock me. While the whole village watched. But 3 years later, the same man. Was kneeling outside my mansion. Begging for mercy. But that rainy night, destroyed one life. And created another. The rain was not just falling, it was screaming. I felt the cold water soak through my thin wrapper as Chitty dragged my heavy wooden box across the muddy floor of our compound. My heart was beating like a drum in a war dance. Please, Chitty, where do you want me to go at this time of the night? I cried, my voice breaking against the sound of the thunder. We had been married for 12 years. I was there when he had only one pair of trousers. I was there when we drank Gary for 3 days straight. Now that the contract from the city had clicked, the house was finally finished, and the car was parked in the garage. He was pushing me out like a piece of refuse. He didn't look at me. His eyes were cold, like a stone at the bottom of a river. He gave one final, powerful shove, and my box landed in a deep puddle of muddy water. The lid popped open, and my few beautiful lace clothes, the ones I saved for church, were covered in filth. I fell to my knees, grasping at his legs, but he kicked my hands away with his polished leather shoes. Then, the front door creaked open wider. I looked up, expecting to see his mother or maybe a neighbor coming to save me. But instead, a young girl stepped out. She couldn't have been more than 22 years old. She was wearing a silk nightgown that cost more than everything I owned. She was holding a glass of wine, looking at me as if I were a stray dog that had wandered into a palace. Chitty reached back and put his arm around her waist. Nneka, look at her well, Chitty said, his voice loud enough for the neighbors to hear through their windows. This is Cynthia. She is my wife now. She is young, she is fresh, and she knows how to make a man feel like a king. You are just a reminder of the days when I was poor and miserable. I felt the air leave my lungs. The shock was so deep it felt like a physical blow to my stomach. Cynthia giggled and leaned her head on his shoulder. Honey, tell her to stop making noise. I want to sleep, she whispered. Chitty nodded and looked at me one last time. You were never enough for a man of my status, Nneka. Go back to your village. The lights in the neighboring houses started coming on. I saw curtains moving. I saw Mama Ibuka standing by her gate, her hand over her mouth. The shame was a hot iron against my skin. I wasn't just losing my husband. I was losing my dignity in front of the whole world. I crawled toward the porch, trying to reach for the wedding ring I had left on the side table earlier that day, hoping maybe, just maybe, seeing it would remind him of our vows. But Cynthia saw what I was looking for. She reached into her pocket and pulled out the gold band. She laughed, a high, tinkling sound that made my blood run cold. Are you looking for this cheap thing? She asked. Before I could answer, she tossed it into the mud right in front of me. It doesn't fit a queen like me, and it clearly didn't work for a slave like you. She stepped back, and Chitty followed her. He didn't even look back as he slammed the heavy iron door and bolted it from the inside. I was left alone in the dark, with nothing but the sound of the rain and the mocking whispers of the wind. I sat in the mud for what felt like hours, clutching the muddy ring to my chest. I felt a shadow fall over me. I looked up, thinking Chitty had changed his mind. But it wasn't him. It was an old woman, the one they called Mama Agba. She lived in a small hut at the edge of the forest and rarely spoke to anyone. She was bone thin, and her eyes seemed to glow in the dark. She didn't offer me a hand to get up. She just stood there, letting the rain beat down on her gray hair. "The tree that is cut down today thinks it is the end," she muttered, her voice sounding like dry leaves rubbing together. I looked at her, confused and broken. "He took everything, Mama," I sobbed. She leaned down, her face inches from mine. "He took the house, but he did not take the sun. He took the bed, but he did not take the dream. Cry today, daughter of the soil, for your tears are the water that will grow your vengeance. Your tears will answer him when the time is right." Before I could ask what she meant, a flash of lightning blinded me. When I blinked, she was gone. The night was a long tunnel of agony. I tried to knock on the gates of our neighbors, but no one opened. In our village, when a man of power like Chitty declares war on his wife, people stay away, so they don't get caught in the crossfire. I walked to the roadside and sat under a small mango tree, shivering so hard my teeth rattled. Every time a car drove past, the headlights felt like accusing eyes. I tried to call my brother in the city, but my phone was wet from the rain. The screen flickered, showed a picture of me and Chitty on our wedding day, and then went black. It felt like a final goodbye. I hugged my knees, feeling the weight of 12 years of service to a man who had discarded me like an empty sachet of water. I had no children to hold, no money in my pocket, and no roof over my head. I wondered if I would even survive the night. The thunder struck again, a massive boom that shook the ground beneath me, and I felt as though the world was ending. I closed my eyes and prayed for sleep to take me away. When the sun rose, it was cruel and bright. I walked back to the house, hoping Chitty had cooled his temper. Maybe it was all a bad dream. Maybe the young girl was just a relative. I tried to convince myself of anything but the truth. But when I reached the gate, the padlock was different. It was a heavy, shiny new lock. I banged on the gate until my knuckles bled. Finally, the small side window opened. It wasn't Chitty. It was a stranger, a man in a uniform. "Move away from here, woman," the security guard shouted. "The master said if you come back, I should call the police." I asked about my things, my clothes, my mother's sewing machine, my cooking pots. The guard laughed. "He sold everything to the Malam down the street this morning. He said he wants a fresh start with his new bride and doesn't want the smell of the past in his house." I felt a scream rising in my throat, but it died there. I was truly a ghost in my own life. Everything I had worked for was gone in less than 12 hours. I found myself at a roadside shelter where the bus drivers rest. I sat on a wooden bench, my clothes now dry but stiff with dirt. I didn't have the strength to even wipe the dust from my face. People passed by, looking at me with pity or disgust. I was the woman whose husband had traded her for a slay queen. The story was already moving through the village like fire through dry grass. I felt so small, like a grain of sand. I closed my eyes and wished I could just disappear into the earth. Just then, I felt a familiar cold breeze, even though the sun was hot. "Why do you sit among the dead when you are still breathing?" a voice asked. I opened my eyes. Mama Agbo was sitting on the bench next to me, though I hadn't heard her approach. Her presence felt heavy, like the air before a storm. "I have nothing left to live for," I whispered. She touched my hand, and her skin felt like warm stone. "The earth does not forget who fed it," she said. Mama Agba stood up and beckoned for me to follow her. I didn't know why, but I felt a pull in my chest that I couldn't resist. We walked for a long time, away from the village square and deep into the quiet parts of the forest where the trees grew tall and thick. We reached her small hut. Inside, it smelled of dried herbs and ancient secrets. She went to a corner and brought out a small, dark calabash. It was wrapped in a piece of red cloth. "What was taken will return to you, Nneka," she said, her eyes fixed on mine. "But it will not return in the way you expect. You want your husband back. No, you want the life you had. No, you want the woman you are meant to be." She held out the calabash. "This is not magic to kill or to harm. It is a vessel of your own strength. Every time you feel like giving up, touch this wood. It will remind you that the ground you walk on is yours." I reached out, my fingers trembling, and took the object. The moment my skin touched the smooth, dark wood of the calabash, a jolt of energy ran up my arm. It wasn't painful. It was like a sudden wake-up call. I felt a warmth spread through my chest, pushing out the cold, hollow feeling of betrayal. I looked down at the vessel. It felt heavier than it looked, and for a second, I thought I saw a faint, golden light pulsing beneath the surface of the wood. "Take it and go to the city," Mama Agba commanded. "Do not look back at the house that rejected you. Do not ask about the man who broke you. Go where the people are many and the opportunities are like rain." I wanted to ask her how I would survive without money or a place to stay. But when I looked up to speak, the old woman was gone. The hut was empty. Only the smell of herbs remained. I tucked the calabash into my bag, tied my wrapper tight, and started walking toward the main road. I didn't know where I was going, but for the first time in years, I wasn't afraid. The city was loud and fast, but I didn't let it swallow me. I found work cleaning a large restaurant. At night, I slept on a mat in the back room, clutching the calabash. One day, the owner of the restaurant fell ill. The kitchen was in chaos. I stepped in and started cooking the way my grandmother had taught me. Slow, rich, and full of flavor. I touched the calabash before I started, asking for the strength to succeed. The food I produced that day was unlike anything the customers had ever tasted. People started coming from blocks away just to eat Nneka's soup. Within months, the owner made me the head chef. Within a year, I had saved enough to open my own small canteen. Every time I faced a challenge, a supplier who tried to cheat me, or a fire in the kitchen, I would touch the calabash, and somehow, things would work out. Money began to flow. I moved from a mat to a room, and from a room to a flat. I was rebuilding myself, brick by brick, and the pain of Chitty was becoming a distant memory. His slay queen wasted his money in Dubai. The wife he called useless was secretly building an empire. Every insult became power. Every tear became money. And Chitty had no idea. Karma was already at his door. His slay queen wasted his money in Dubai. The wife he called useless was secretly building an empire. Every insult became power. Every tear became money. 3 years passed. I was no longer the haggard woman in the rain. I was now the owner of the Golden Pot, a chain of high-end restaurants across the state. I wore silk, my skin glowed like polished bronze, and I carried myself with the grace of a woman who knew her worth. I had changed my name to Nina, a version of myself that was stronger and more refined. People who knew me before wouldn't recognize me now. I had become powerful, influential, and very wealthy. Men of high standing tried to court me, but I kept my heart behind a wall of glass. I never mentioned Chitty. I never asked about the village. In my mind, that part of my life was a book I had burned. I thought I was free, but life has a way of bringing back the things we try to forget, not because we need them, but because they need to see how much we have outgrown them. I was standing in my office one morning when my secretary told me a man was outside, begging for a contract to supply vegetables. While I was rising, Chitty was falling, though I didn't know it yet. In the village, things had turned sour very quickly. The contract money he had been so proud of began to vanish. Cynthia was not a builder, she was a consumer. She demanded the latest cars, expensive trips to Dubai, and jewelry that cost millions. When Chitty tried to tell her to slow down, she would scream and break things. She didn't cook, she didn't clean. She spent her days with younger men in the city, while Chitty worked himself to the bone. The love he thought he had found was actually a trap. The peace he had traded for freshness was gone, replaced by a constant headache of bills and drama. His business started to suffer because he couldn't focus. He made mistakes, lost big clients, and started taking out high-interest loans just to keep Cynthia happy. He was walking on a thin wire, and the wind was starting to blow very hard. He thought he was in control, but he was losing his grip. The betrayal Chitty had practiced on me was now being visited upon him. One afternoon, he came home early because he was feeling sick. He walked into his bedroom, only to find Cynthia in the arms of his own driver. The shock almost gave him a stroke. Instead of being ashamed, Cynthia laughed in his face. "You thought I loved you, Chitty?" She sneered as she straightened her hair. "You are old enough to be my father, I only stayed for the bank account, and let's be honest, that account is looking very thin these days. She didn't even pack her bags carefully. She just took the jewelry she had bought with his money and walked out. Chitty sat on the edge of the bed, the same bed where he had once told me I was never enough. He looked around the house and realized it was empty. Not just empty of people, but empty of soul. He had traded a diamond for a piece of glass, and the glass had finally shattered in his hand. The downfall was fast and brutal. With Cynthia gone, the creditors came knocking like a swarm of locusts. They took the cars first. Then they took the furniture. Finally, the bank came for the house. The very house he had dragged me out of. Chitty was forced to move into a small, one-room apartment in a noisy part of town. His business was gone. His reputation was in tatters. And the friends who used to drink his expensive brandy no longer picked up his calls. He was left with nothing but his regrets. He would sit by the window, watching the rain. And for the first time in years, he thought about me. He remembered how I used to massage his feet after a long day. He remembered how I could make a feast out of a few tubers of yam. He realized that I was the foundation of his life, and he had demolished his own foundation. He was now a man without a home, living in the shadow of his own bad choices. He hit total rock bottom when he was evicted from the one-room apartment. He found himself standing on the same roadside where I had sat 3 years ago. He was broke, hungry, and humiliated. He looked at his hands. They were shaking. He had no one to turn to. His mother had passed away, ashamed of his behavior, and his siblings wanted nothing to do with him. As he walked through the streets, he saw a billboard. It featured a beautiful woman in a stunning dress, advertising the opening of a new luxury hotel. He squinted his eyes. The woman looked familiar. The eyes were the same, but the confidence was new. Nino Galibu, CEO of the Golden Pot Group. The sign read. His heart skipped a beat. Could it be? Could the woman he threw away like trash be the most successful businesswoman in the state? He felt a spark of hope, a selfish, desperate hope. If he could find her, maybe she would remember their years together. Maybe she would take him back. The memory of my face began to haunt his every waking hour. He didn't see the woman he had abused. He saw a lifeboat. He spent days asking around, trying to find out where I lived or worked. Most people laughed at him. You want to see Nina? You and who else? A security guard told him. She doesn't see people like you without an appointment 6 months in advance. But Chitty was desperate. He sold his last good watch to buy a bus ticket to the city where my main office was located. He looked terrible. His clothes were faded. His shoes were worn down to the soles, and he had lost so much weight his skin hung loosely on his frame. He walked the streets of the city, clutching a crumpled piece of paper with my office address. He was a shadow of the man who had once kicked me in the rain. He finally arrived at the gates of my corporate headquarters, a massive glass building that reached for the sky. He stood at the entrance, staring up at the building. He felt like an ant. He tried to walk past the heavy glass doors, but 2 large security guards blocked his path. I'm here to see Nneka. I mean Nina. He stammered. The guards looked at his dirty shirt and laughed. The CEO? Do you have an appointment? Chitty tried to explain that he was her husband, but the guards only laughed harder. Our boss isn't married, and even if she were, she wouldn't be married to a beggar like you. Move along before we call the police. Chitty refused to leave. He sat on the pavement outside the building, waiting. He waited through the heat of the day and the cold of the evening. People walked past him, giving him small change, thinking he was just another homeless man. He didn't care. He was waiting for a glimpse of the woman he had once owned. He wanted to believe that somewhere deep down, I still loved him. The same man who kicked me into the mud was now kneeling outside my gate, crying, begging, broken. But the woman he betrayed died that rainy night. And the woman standing before him owed him nothing. Finally, at around 6 p.m., a convoy of black SUVs pulled out of the underground garage. The middle car stopped just before the gate to allow a flower delivery truck to pass. Chitty saw his chance. He scrambled to his feet and ran toward the tinted window of the car. "Nneka! Nneka, it's me!" he screamed, banging his fists against the glass. The door opened slowly. I stepped out, flanked by 2 bodyguards. I was wearing a tailored white suit, and my hair was perfectly styled. I looked at the man in front of me. He was filthy, smelling of sweat and failure. I looked into his eyes, the same eyes that had watched me cry in the mud. I felt nothing. No anger, no sadness, just a deep sense of distance. I looked at him as if he were a bug on the windshield. "Is there a problem here?" I asked my head of security, my voice calm and icy. Chitty gasped. "Nneka, it's Chitty. Your husband. I found you." I paused for a second, my hand on the car door. The crowd that had gathered was whispering. I could see the confusion on Chitty's face. He expected me to cry, or to scream, or maybe even to hug him. He expected some kind of emotional reaction, but I just tilted my head slightly. "I'm sorry," I said, my voice projecting clearly so everyone could hear. "I think you have the wrong person. My name is Nina, and I don't have a husband." I turned to get back into the car. Chitty fell to his knees, right there on the hot asphalt. "Nneka, please. I made a mistake. Cynthia took everything. I have nothing. Please, remember our 12 years. Remember how we started." He was sobbing now. Great big gulps of air that made his chest heave. It was a pathetic sight. A man who had once been a lion was now a wounded dog, begging for a scrap of attention. I didn't look back. I closed the door, and the car drove away, leaving him in a cloud of exhaust. But Chitty didn't give up. He found out where my house was, a mansion in the most expensive part of the city. The next morning, I woke up to find him kneeling outside my gate. He had been there all night. A small crowd of journalists and neighbors had gathered, sensing a scandal. He was crying loudly, calling out my name, telling anyone who would listen about how he had wronged his queen. He was trying to use public shame to force my hand, just like he had used public shame to break me 3 years ago. He thought that if he made enough noise, I would have to take him in to protect my reputation. He didn't realize that the woman he was dealing with now didn't care about the opinions of people who weren't there when she was sleeping under a mango tree. I finished my breakfast, drank my tea, and then told my gardener to open the small gate. It was time to end this. I walked out slowly, the heels of my shoes clicking against the stone driveway. The crowd went silent. Chitty looked up, his face covered in dirt and tears. He tried to crawl toward me, but my bodyguard stepped in his way. I signaled for them to move back. I stood over him, looking down at the man who had once been my entire world. My eyes were calm, like a still lake. There were no tears in them, and there was no anger. Anger is a form of caring, and I no longer cared enough to be angry. "You have been making a lot of noise, Chitty," I said quietly. "You are disturbing my neighbors." He reached out, trying to touch the hem of my trousers. "Nneka, my wife, please. I was blind. That girl, she used juju on me. I didn't know what I was doing. Please, take me back. I will be your servant. Just don't leave me like this." I listened to him talk for a long time. He went on and on about our past, about the good times, about how much he regretted that night in the rain. He spoke as if the 12 years of our marriage could erase the one night of his cruelty. He spoke as if I owed him something, because we had once been poor together. When he finally ran out of words, he looked up at me with expectant eyes, waiting for me to say, "It's okay, come inside." Instead, I smiled. It was a cold, thin smile that didn't reach my eyes. "It's funny, Chitty," I said. "You remember the 12 years, but I only remember the rain. I only remember the way you kicked my hands away when I begged you. I only remember the sound of that lock clicking shut." He started to interrupt, but I held up a hand. "You say you want your wife back, but there's a small problem with your plan." I reached into my small handbag and pulled out the dark calabash Mama Agba had given me. It was small now, polished and beautiful, looking like a piece of expensive art. I held it up so the sun caught its surface. "Do you remember the night you threw me out?" I asked. Chitty nodded fearfully, staring at the object in my hand. That night a woman died, I said, my voice dropping to a whisper that felt like a knife. The Nneka who loved you. The Nneka who sacrificed her youth for you. The Nneka who would have died for you. She died in that mud. She drowned in the rain you left her in. The woman standing before you is Nina. She was born from the ashes of your betrayal. She doesn't know you. She doesn't owe you a single bowl of Gary. I lifted the calabash slightly, and for a moment, the air around us felt heavy and charged with an invisible power. As I held the vessel, Chitty suddenly gasped. He clutched his chest and fell backward. It wasn't a heart attack, but a sudden, overwhelming wave of his own memories. For the first time, he truly felt the weight of what he had done. He didn't just see the image of me in the rain. He felt the cold. He felt the shame. He felt the absolute hopelessness he had forced upon me. The psychological weight was so heavy, he couldn't even stand. He rolled on the ground, groaning as if he were being crushed by an invisible hand. "Make it stop," he cried. "Please make it stop." I looked at him with pity, not the pity of a lover, but the pity one feels for a broken machine. The justice of the earth is slow, Chitty, but it is very sure. You didn't just throw away a woman. You threw away your own luck, and now your luck has run out. I turned my back on him. I walked back into my house without looking back. I heard him calling my name one last time, but his voice was weak and faded, drowned out by the sound of the wind in the trees. My bodyguards moved him away from the gate and onto the public sidewalk. The crowd eventually dispersed, bored now that the show was over. Chitty remained on the ground, a broken man in a city that didn't care. He had come to find a savior, but all he found was a mirror reflecting his own ugliness. I went to my balcony and looked out over the city. I was whole. I was successful. I was free. I took the muddy wedding ring, the one Cynthia had thrown in the dirt, and I let it drop from the balcony into the deep bushes below. It was finally over. She watched him leave her life years ago. Today, she watched him beg for a life he no longer deserved. The sun set, and for the first time in a long time, I slept the sleep of the innocent.